Hello and welcome back to Drama After Dark, WGBH's live drama after show. Yes, folks, that is right. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and tonight we're talking about Poldark Season 5, Episode 5. I am your host, Jackie Bruley, as always joined by co-host Andrea Willanen. And tonight we have a special guest, Meredith Goldstein.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So we're going to get stuff started tonight with a timed recap for speed. Andrea's going to be doing this tonight. Andrea, are you ready?
We'll see.
I believe in you. You got
you.
this.
Do I hit the timer?
And go!
It's Christmas and all as well, except it's not. Kitty is getting sicker, Caroline is getting sicker of Kitty, and everyone is getting sicker of Ned. Back in London, we find out the PM has resigned and that Merceron is the mystery falconer and that he's really into slavery. Ew. After Geoffrey Charles asks for Cecily's hand, Hanson says they are never, ever, ever going to get together. And a vengeful Cecily gives Ross a letter that explains her father's slaves' poor living conditions. Out on the town, Ned runs his mouth and gets framed for treason. And out in Cornwall, the Carnes are foiling counterfeiters and kidnapping children.
Perfect! That could not have been better.
Thank you.
Turned that magnificently.
I worked on it this week. I feel like you've been showing me up lately, and I needed to really bring the game.
I have always felt that you are better at the recaps. I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
We like to pretend to be nice to each other, at least for part of the show.
Yeah, at least before we start slinging insults in the hot take debate.
Now, this was obviously a really big episode. A lot happened, but we wanted to focus on a couple of our very favorite moments. The first one that we have written down here is Morwenna talking with John Conan the Barbarian and saying goodbye to him. This was one of your favorites, Andrea.
It was. I thought it was, as we know, I am a sucker for the adorable children moments in this show. And I've really loved Morwenna and John Conan's relationship because he seems a little lost in that house. You know, he's there with his grandmother, he's getting great education, but he sort of feels untouched in a way, like he's not getting, you know, cuddles or something like that that kids need. And Morwenna going to see him and telling him that she loves him and all that has been really great. And I think that made this moment where she says goodbye to him all the more heartbreaking, because while she's going to tell this kid that, he's probably not going to remember it. So part of it is for her and her own mental health and like a moment of closure for her. And at the same time, she just can't abandon this kid, which I thought was really sweet too.
Yeah, completely agree. Another moment that we all, I think, enjoyed, we were just watching the show on the couch here, was the Zachy and Demelza put on a pantomime moment.
Yes.
And Meredith, you had an interesting take on this scene.
Well, wait, which?
This is the bit where we're in the bar and Demelza and Zachy Martin have come in and they're like, hello, everyone.
Well,
counterfeit money.
Right, no, listen, she had every right in that moment to call people out, and this sort of taking the high road, not perhaps what I would have done.
I don't think it's what any of us would have done.
And of course she's looking exactly at the right person where she's sort of doing that nice giveaway, but yeah.
I just love that she always solves her problems this way. Like, Demelza loves to put on a show, and I can really respect that. We saw it earlier this season, I think, with the bank, where she gets all of the people to come in and say, I want to bank at this specific bank, and here's my money.
I think that was season 4, but yeah, where she was like, yeah, Demelza's like, oh, there's a problem happening? Hold on, I can solve this.
Now, speaking of solving problems, today we wanted to call out one of our favorite characters, especially in this episode, Caroline Penvenin, lawyer / badass, saving the day a lot this episode.
Quite a few times.
Oh yeah. I think the part at the end where they're searching the house and then she gets the cops to all sign the thing that says we really looked everywhere in front of witnesses, I thought that was pretty impressive.
It was very smart, and I think it was this amazing moment where yet again Caroline has the wherewithal that so many of the people around her don't have. And she's just there to be like, okay, how can I make this easy as possible for my friend, and how can I ensure that he doesn't find himself in this situation again? And I think she's you know, we've talked about before how Caroline has a little bit of a conniving quality to her. She's very much a gossip and a plotter, but she uses her powers for good, which what else do you want in a conniver? And I think that's one of the things with this is it's really her being like, how could this go wrong? And she sees all the ways that they could get back to Ross on this. And she's like, I know, I got this. I got the solution. And I mean, it's just one of the many ways that she really pulls a trump card in this episode.
think if you're going to be a hot mess, as Ross often is,
Yeah.
you need to have a Caroline friend
Oh, absolutely.
who's going to show up and save your butt.
Absolutely.
Now, we wanted to hear from you tonight, audience. We have a few tweets coming in, a few Facebook posts, but we want to know from you what your favorite moments are, and also, do you think Ned is doomed? We had a lot of Ned tonight, and it might be a problem. So get at us with those thoughts. You can put them in Facebook and Twitter, in the comments on YouTube, and we will read them. To show that we will read them, here are some great tweets that we gathered from earlier while we were watching. Actually, this calls back to what you were saying, Meredith. Demelza's glare at Tess was so satisfying and made me laugh a little. She would be a perfect teacher. And then it's got this amazing shot of Batman just like staring down the camera, which we love. We have a reaction to Ned here. Suzanne Morse, at Suzanne Morse on Twitter, says, I mean, I'd cheer if Ned was truly trying to liberate the Irish Catholics, but no. So it seems as though Suzanne thinks that Ned is maybe not actually trying to do a good deed. I don't know what you guys think. We should talk about that later. And then, finally, another comment at Tegan Reyes says, finally, Poldark PBS is giving my badass Caroline something other to do than throwing awkward parties to solve race relations.
Yes.
Agree. Hard agree. So don't forget, let us know what you're thinking, and we will read those later on. But first, an interview.
Yay.
Yay!
So Meredith, tell us about yourself.
Well, I am the relationship advice columnist for the Boston Globe. So as you can imagine, after many years of giving love advice, this is a show that is very fun for me to watch because if only I could sit down with every character on this show.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
the work I'd have. Write a whole year's worth of columns on this show.
It's pretty great. That's a really cool job, and I'm curious, what is your favorite part of it?
I think it's just knowing that I get real letters from people who are going through struggles like right now. So people who just really want to do their best in their relationships, and they're wondering if they should get married or get divorced, or how to ask somebody out on a first date, or how to navigate, the middle of a marriage. And, it makes me feel like I'm having a zillion relationships at once because I get to live vicariously through the best and the worst of it. But, at the end of the day, it's made me very optimistic about relationships because people are really thoughtful when they write me a letter. So that means they're thinking.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
That is, I think, the opposite reaction of what I would have. I feel like it'd be easy to get so bummed out about the struggles that people are having. That's really nice way to think about it.
And that's what I feared, but the opposite is true because when you take time to write a letter like that, you're really trying to do better.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. It's very optimistic. But how does one become a relationship columnist?
Well, I was doing a lot of stories for the Globe about technology and how it was changing people's relationships, and yet I also had opinions about how it should change relationships. And I think that there's a long history of reporters becoming advice columnists. So, I said to the Globe, maybe this is something we should have locally in-house. And 10 years later, it's a great community of people. I think people who read advice columns are so much fun. They love to talk about this stuff. So whenever anybody says, well, what qualifies you? I always joke, well, nothing, right? But if I were a true mental health professional, you don't sort of tell people what to do after reading their letter. But, but in this kind of like group therapy session, it's a nice outlet for people.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, you've said about Poldark,
Yes.
you would have your work cut out with this
I
group.
would have my work cut out for me.
But what else do you love about the show?
I mean, one thing I love about the show is that in so many narratives about love, we spend so many years on a will they or won't they, that we lead up, will Jim and Pam get together, right?
Yes.
And then it's many seasons in that they do. When I first started watching Poldark, which my friend Joni told me to watch, so thanks, Joni. I was shocked that by like episode 3 they're married, right? And they're having a child. And so the most interesting part of the relationship to me, which is not necessarily the meet cute, but like the nuts and bolts of a marriage, a complicated marriage, that's what we get to see. So I love the span of time. I love that it's not just a story about flirtation, that it really shows us even the boredom in a relationship, I think, to some extent.
Absolutely. And we have seen that with them. Sometimes they do get their own boredom, and though we have seen that
They know how to scratch the 7-year itch.
They do.
Ross and Demelza certainly find ways to get rid of that boredom.
They do,
in
but
their own
even
ways.
I think it's like right around season 2 where, he's sort of thinking about Elizabeth in a different way, and I think how unique is it to have a show where there's already that looking in another direction that we would never see in another narrative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what are other dramas that you like besides Poldark?
I mean, my gosh, I know that I will rewatch Buffy the Vampire Slayer over and over and over. I love the show Lovesick, which was an English show. I mean, there's so many shows. I usually it's at the heart of relationships, but if we're talking about what I would recommend, is that what we are? Is that the question here?
We'll actually get to that a little bit
because
later
I have
on,
so
save
I have
your recommendation.
okay.
Yes,
I'm
we're
saving
excited.
it. Yeah,
We're saving that for.
But really,
our
if people
perfect
make
point.
out, I probably like that show.
It's funny that you say Buffy because that's a show we both enjoy that as well,
Yes.
and that
Oh,
is
yeah.
a show with so many complicated relationships.
It
in it.
is, and when you think about eternal life and this sort of metaphor what does it forever mean? What does it look like? That's something I find. I love all vampire narratives because I think it's a great metaphor for marriage. And one of my favorite movies is Only Lovers Left Alive because it's sort of about marriage and what happens when you're married literally forever.
Yeah, wow, I never
You
really
know,
thought
it's
about
like
it that way,
it's
but-
like it kind of just keeps going. And so
Yeah.
how do you make it work?
We'll talk more about this
Okay.
after
Oh
the
yeah,
show.
this is going to be fun.
But this was a great interview with you. Thank you so
Thank
much for giving
you.
us a window into your life.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of complicated relationships, we are now heading into one of our favorite segments, and that segment is Hot Take Debate. Woo! And this is a special Love Letters edition.
Yes.
I love it.
So tonight, instead of doing our typical one of us fights you with words, not hands, we're gonna all pick a relationship on the show that we think is really good, and then defend it against everyone else, and which one we think is the best relationship on the show. So as our guest, Meredith, we'll let you go first.
But can I cheat?
Pick your fighters.
Can I cheat a little bit and do a fake one and a real one?
Oh yeah, why not?
Absolutely.
Okay, so when asked this question, my first instinct is to say the best relationship on this show is Ross and Dwight,
I love that.
because what a wonderful friendship, and here are two people who want the best for each other, truly listen to each other, and never assume that the other one has bad intentions.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in terms of like giving advice, talk about the counsel that we've seen on the show between the two of them. So I love them. But if we're talking romantic relationships, I'm going to be controversial, and I'm going to say Ross and Demelza. This is a flawed relationship between two people who've made mistakes in betraying each other. And yet so many times that happens in great relationships, and we never get to see people negotiate their way out of it and fall in love again. And these two people managed to do that, to accept each other's shortcomings, get better at it, and move on. And I love watching them, win at that.
I'm not mad at that.
Okay.
However, I think that my couple is better. I'm just going to say it. Now, in terms of people who have been through some hardships, Drake and Morwenna have suffered. We've got Morwenna having to marry the most disgusting character on the show, possibly, and George is kind of gross. But then they get together, and she still has so much ingrained trauma from that. And one of the joys of this season has been able to watch Morwenna and Drake talk that out, and him being so respectful of her and understanding her boundaries. And then in this episode tonight, when she just says to him, like, look, I never actually grieved for what I lost, and now I'm going to work on that, and I think I'm ready to move on. Like, oh.
It's some of my favorite writing in the whole series was
Yeah.
in tonight's episode.
I know they're young, and they're sometimes kind of doofy and naive seeming, but I stan a legendary couple.
So I'm going to contradict you both.
Oh, okay.
No agreements here.
All right.
And I am going to say that my favorite are Dwight and Caroline. That is my ship. I will stand on the proudly.
I love it.
So why I think they're great is because, when we first saw them get together, as I talked about before, Caroline has this little conniving attitude to her. She's a schemer. And when she met Dwight, it sort of seemed like her natural intention to scheme and sort of be flirtatious and fun and not have a care in her head sort of went away, and she was like, this man is serious about things and he cares about things, and I want to help him with everything that he cares about. And it sort of brought out the best in her, because then that turned into, I want to help Ross with all the things he cares about, and I want to help Demelza with all the things she cares about. And it became Caroline going from a what's best for me and Horace to a what's best for me and the people that I love because of my husband, Dwight. And I think their relationship is super healthy because he's made her a better person, and she's been, in her own way, able to make him a better person as well, because he's sort of, his faults in the beginning were very much, he didn't think about himself enough, and he was very giving to a fault even. And she sort of made him understand that that's great, but he needs to pull back and take care of the things around him, because he can't continue to help people if he gives it all at times. So
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
For the fun.
For the fun.
But partly because I think that this season has actually been really weak for Dwight and Caroline, and I love them very much. I also ship them to the end of time, but their communication issues have been really coming through this season, where they're using Horace in a much more passive-aggressive way as their communication.
Which isn't fair to
buffer,
Horace, as we all know.
No, we love Horace and we want him to be happy. But also, I think that Caroline's jealousy of Kitty, which is so odd to me because Dwight is very devoted to her, but that's been coming out a lot this season, and I'm worried that they're not talking about it in a way that will help them. And we saw how dangerous that can be for relationships with Ross and Demelza and their various shenanigans.
I also have to say that, because Dwight is so kind, I have to wonder if he'd be that great with, I'd ship him with anyone. He's just a really great husband.
Yeah, ship Dwight with me. That's what I'm saying.
You can't. We took the quiz last week.
Right,
you
I'm
are
Dwight.
You can't ship yourself with yourself.
Self-love, Andrea.
Okay, fine. Self-care. I just think I disagree with that, because I think one of the things that we're seeing is Caroline is still caring for Kitty, even though she does have that jealousy, and she's made it known to him. He's told her it's not true, and then since then she's sort of been like, I'm still feeling it, but I'm going to respectfully feel what I'm feeling, let you do your thing, and sometimes it's a little too much and I have to vent.
That's fair.
All right?
That's fair.
All right?
All right. Okay, fine. Does anyone have any other strong feelings that they have to get out here?
I do have to say I agree with Meredith on Ross and Demelza being, it's been very enjoyable to see them throughout the show, and have them being married from episode 3, so that we see how this relationship is playing out. I think that's been really fascinating.
And I wish there were more narratives out there in shows about people who cheat and overcome it. It's like we pretend as though that is the worst thing that can ever happen and is insurmountable, and in fact it is surmountable.
And it's funny because I can only think of one other one, which is in Sex and the City.
Oh, right.
Actually, was Miranda's relationship, I believe. Sorry, spoilers for everybody out there.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I can't think of any others where it's been.
And where that sort of it's drawn out, right? Where we truly get to see her still sort of eye rolling him perhaps a year later, and then he has to deal with it. So I find that really fascinating.
I never really thought about that, but now I'm kind of curious to know if we'll see more of those narratives as time goes on.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to take a quick break to check and see what's going on the internet, so I'm going to grab my phone here. Oh, we have some tweets. Sorry for the song, everyone, but that's how I roll. Okay, we've got a lot of Ned reactions here.
Oh boy.
I know, as we're like, oh, Ned. Come on, Ned. All right. Ned's recklessness will be his undoing. Yes. At Ealisade? I am not really sure how to pronounce that. It's a Twitter handle, so I'll do what I can. Sandra N says, I really dislike how Ned Despard is portrayed in this season, and Ross's blind, clueless loyalty to him just isn't Winston Graham's Ross. Ooh, harsh words from Sandra. I think this is really interesting since we know that Ned is a historical character. I'm kind of curious. I tried not to look up too much about him because I thought, what if there was a spoiler? And there probably would be. So that's interesting. Someone whose Twitter handle is Kitty Despard, which is amazing. Kitty crying describes my state right now. Ned's arrest is a win for slavery and colonialism, and then the upside down smiley face, which is like, a mood. And then this same Kitty fan also says, I'm starting a non-denominational prayer circle for Ned Despard until we see Poldark on Masterpiece again. Who wants in? I'm not mad at it. These are all really interesting takes. Thank you so much for sending these in. Please, if you've got thoughts, put them on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We'll find them. We have a social media producer looking at stuff right now for your tweets. So, yeah, give us a shout.
So, Jackie, I believe that it's time for a historical fact check from you.
Indeed. Indeed it is. So tonight we saw a lot of discussion of paper money, which is kind of funky to me. And so we wanted to look into that a little bit more. So I did a little bit of research on the internet. And here's what I found out. So banknotes were actually rolled out in Britain in 1694, which is like way earlier than I thought.
And way earlier than this episode, in fact.
Yes, but they were only for denominations of 50 pounds or more. So most people's annual income was only 20 pounds, which is like nothing. So no one got that money unless you were like George Warlegan. And as Andrea said earlier, yes, we could indeed have a situation where George is in a bed just throwing money in the air.
Theoretically, George rolling in paper money bed. Could happen.
Totally possible.
Just saying.
A thing that could go on.
Rebecca, just saying.
Come on, Rebecca, you can give it to us, we need it. So that's that. But it wasn't until 1797 when there were starting to be runs on the banks due to all this unrest with the French War, which we were actually seeing on the show, that they started printing paper money in 1 and 2 pound notes, which we're starting to see here. Now, fun fact, small local banks were allowed to print their own money in this time. Which is kind of bonkers. And that was still legal until the Bank Charter Act of 1844, which basically just said no new banks are going to be allowed to do this, and if you're printing money, stop it now. But money stays in circulation for a long time. So the last private banknotes were issued in 1921. That's not that long ago.
No.
That's just that's crazy to me that they were still like, oh look, I got Warlegan banknotes.
Fingers crossed, somebody was running around with Warlegan banknotes.
Hopefully not. But anyway, that's been your historical fact check. A little bit of green action for you, just for the fun of it.
Just so we could know if it was possible for Tess to actually be running around counterfeiting money. And clearly, yes.
It was, indeed, yeah. So our next segment is going to be featuring our special guest, and this segment is called Who Should Cecily Wed?
I don't think Cecily should wed.
Yes! This is great. That's a great answer. Tell us
There's
why.
something about Cecily as a character where so often I just want to couple people up, right? I'm always wanting to couple people up, and yet her options are like not great, right? Number one option is terrible, and number two option is incredibly earnest and well-meaning, but I'm not entirely sure there's a real maturity there. And I think about the evolution of Cecily and sort of what she wants and what she feels backed into. And, you know, we had this wonderful Caroline narrative where she was sort of able to set her own pace and her terms. And if I could, you know, come up with a strategy for Cecily to be able to not be in one corner or the other, that's the lane I pick. Probably not going to happen that way, but.
And I think to your point, when Cecily came and saw Morwenna and Drake and they were like, romance, love, wedding, her reaction was literally, ew, hate it, no, bye.
She didn't want to do it. And what she says to Demelza is like, when did you know
Yeah.
you made a mistake, right? She might get to the place where she does, you know, when Demelza says to her, like, marry the person you love. For this moment, I thought, I don't know who that is yet. I'm not fully sure that that's anyone right now.
And she might be too young to be there, too.
Absolutely.
Because she is I think that's one of the things that's hard to remember with this show is that Cecily's probably theoretically like 16 in this show.
Oh God, yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
Cecily needs time to be Cecily.
Yeah.
And I think we have this idea of like grand romances being around young people, partly because of like Bill Shakespeare. You got a little Romeo and Juliet action.
Bill.
They're 13, way too young.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're right. I think Cecily is a little too young. Now, just to push the envelope here, if you have to choose George or Jeffrey Charles, who would
I
you
have such
pick?
a soft spot for George, which I know is not the point of this show. I just do. I mean,
Live your truth.
And I feel like if anybody could get to a place with George where there's a negotiation and a shared power, it might be Cecily. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
And to balance that, I think also for what Cecily's looking for, George might not be bad.
Yeah.
Because he would be like, here's your money, goodbye, I'm going to go
Arrangement.
mourn for Elizabeth.
Yep.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, you may have to do a little bit of light child care, but
Light childcare.
There's a bunch of maids and stuff looking after Valentine already.
I wouldn't mind chilling with Valentine and Ursula personally.
Sure.
So, you know.
I'm not mad at it. All right, I like this. We're gonna go on to our next segment. One of my favorites to say. if you like this. I don't know why I say it that way, but we do. And tonight's If You Like This will be Andrea's pick first.
Yes. So my pick for today's If You Like This, I refuse to do Jackie's imitation.
That's fine. That's fine. I'll live.
I don't want to flatter her. Oh. But my recommendation this week is Prime Suspect Tennyson. So what we saw this week was a lot of badass women taking charge in a man's world. And that's what this show is. It is the proto-Helen Mirren Tennyson, and she's finding her way in a man's world that's really heavy, but she is making it work, and I think that's what's really cool about it. So anybody who enjoyed the women taking charge-ness of this episode will definitely enjoy Masterpiece's Prime Suspect, so check it out. And I know Meredith also has a recommendation for us.
I do.
It's your time.
It's my time.
Do it.
Well, when anybody tells me they like Poldark, I tell them to read a book series. This is not on your television, which is the Spindle Cove series by Tessa Dare, and she's a Regency romance novelist. And the reason I love it is because it's about a bunch of women. Spindle Cove sounds a little bit like Spinster Cove for a reason, but it's about a group of women who sort of live by the ocean and or keep to themselves until obviously men show up and fall in love with each and every one of them.
Sure,
But it's the kind of story where I imagine if Elizabeth and Demelza and Caroline lived alone together and didn't have to deal with any of the other nonsense, imagine the business they do, the conversations they'd have,
yes.
if it was sort of this like matriarchal society. That's that book series, and it's Tessa Dare, the Spindle Cove series. To me, it's almost like the fan fiction of the women of Poldark.
Yes.
I love it.
We are going to be putting that on our library queues as soon as this show closes.
Oh, absolutely. Now, speaking of women, perfect segue. Thanks for that setup.
Good work.
We're going to move on to our ranking of the day. And tonight's ranking is going to be the top 5 ladies save the day moments on tonight's episode of Poldark.
Of which there were many this week.
A lot.
It was a hard choice for us.
We almost ended up with more than 5, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Now, in the number 5 spot, we have Ossie's mom. Lets Morwenna say goodbye to John Conan the Barbarian, and maybe is even softening enough to do a little bit more than that. I thought that was a good moment.
It was, I mean, the bar is low, but sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think the thing is we've seen her do so many bad things. Like even in her interactions with her own child, she's very like, "Where's my son? I must see him." And then she sees him and is like, "Hello, I'm here," and that's it. And now we see her.
Such a good impression. That's really upsetting.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
And then when we see her saying goodbye to John Conan, you see in that moment, oh, she does have a heart, and she does understand this woman's pain. And we're hoping that little twinkle in her eye signifies something more. You never know, but
Fingers
it might.
crossed.
Fingers crossed. But it was a moment where she really had her time to shine.
Now, speaking of times to shine, our number 4 spot is Cecily stealing the letter that has all that juicy, terrible implications for what's actually going on in the mahogany trade that then she gives to Ross.
And this is at our number 4 spot and not higher on the list because Cecily is doing it completely out of her own self-interest. You know, as we've been hinting at, she is in not a great spot, and you know, she does say that she supports anti-slavery and all that, but it seems kind of lip service-y at times, and she's only doing it in this situation to, as she puts it, drive a wedge between George and her father. So it's a great moment because it does further the plot, but she's really only doing it for herself in this situation.
Agreed. Now, in our number 3 spot, I think this is something that we've had on every single one of our top 5s this year, which is Kitty calms Ned down. You know, I don't know how many other ways I can say it. Kitty, God bless her, she's doing everything that she can to keep her crazy husband safe.
Yeah. And just thank goodness Demelza's not the one married to him, is the other side of that coin.
Oh my God. Can you imagine the bar fights they'd be getting into? It's bad enough with Ross, but I think Demelza's even more fiery than...
It's true. And we actually didn't bring up Kitty and Ned in our hot take debate at all. What is your take on their relationship?
Oh, well, I wouldn't put them up on a the emotional labor she's doing.
Oh my God, yeah.
You know, I feel like what is disguised as, you know, his passion for the cause is not always what's best for his spouse.
No.
In terms of the way he deals with it, and she winds up picking up the pieces.
A lot.
That's true.
Yeah, hard agree. Now, in the number 2 spot, we have Demelza tells Drake to return John Conan the Barbarian. I mean, he stole a kid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't steal that kid.
Don't steal a kid.
You'd think you wouldn't have to say it.
And
but
it's even, the child in question is so young, it's not even kidnapping. He literally probably just was like, okay, I'm taking this now. A genuine theft of a child.
yeah, just bundle him up into your rucksack and run for the beach. Ugh, Drake, what are you thinking? And in the number 1 spot, we've already talked about this today, but it does not, we can never talk about it enough. Caroline, this entire episode, going to London to save the day, getting Dwight to help Ross to save the day, and then finally dealing with the police to save the day. Caroline, MVP.
True MVP of this episode. I mean, she, as I talked about when we were talking about our favorite moments, she just can't, she's doing so many things and just really running the game here that it's just really impressive.
And she has the confidence that comes with privilege, and she uses it for good.
Exactly, and that's what we like about her so much, is she knows what she can do and she does everything that she can, and that's really what's impressive about her. She could just sit back and be like, my husband, me and my pug in our carriage going through the park, but she's like, no, we gotta go do something about Ross, I guess, again.
Well, and the thing that I find so impressive about her is that she so clearly has the perfect line of what is too much and what will actually get them in trouble. And I think Dwight, and it probably gets to your point, Meredith, about the fact that she comes from a little bit more privilege than Dwight does, but there's that moment where Dwight is just so done with Ross. He's like, you know, you keep defending Ned, you're gonna get us all killed. Like, I'm leaving, I'm gonna go away with my wife because I have to protect her. And Caroline is just like, Dwight, what good are you doing in this carriage with a pug?
Yep.
Yes. Why
it
are you
together.
having a fight with your best friend? This is adorable, but please stop.
We need to go to his house right now and foil the plot.
Exactly.
And foil it they did.
Exactly. Good work.
Good work, well done, good show. Now, speaking of hopefully good show, we'd love to see what you guys are thinking, so I'm just gonna go check out the old internet here. Gotta get in my phone. Oh, we do have more things. It's coming, guys, it's coming. Okay, so, Sandwich, gotta love the Halloween Twitter names, this is fun. Ned's a hot-headed fool who's making his own downfall too easy. I think we agree. Oh, this is so great. Liz M says, can I be a Poldark woman? They are such fantastic role models and get so much done and are problem solvers. And then there's just a great shot of Demelza in a GIF.
Yes, Liz M.
We agree, Liz. You're right on the money. And then the suspense is building. So sad to know this is the final season. Why does it have to end?
We're never going to see George in the bed full of money.
Ah!
Or will we?
We maybe could just get the Masterpiece team to call him up.
Yeah.
Let's look into
It's
that.
it's the fan fiction we'll write.
Yeah. We also had Barrett on the first week. She seems to have some sway.
I like it. We're going
All
to
right.
call Barrett. And then finally, we have one last tweet that I think is just great. At RobotSpec says, why is the cat bothering me while I'm eating ice cream and watching Poldark? I don't bother her while she's eating ice cream and watching Poldark. Wonderful question, Cat. I don't know what your name is, Cat, but move away. Don't be a jerk. And that's it. That's our comment of the day. Because I love a cat.
Who doesn't?
And ice cream. So with that.
So I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, Meredith.
Thank you for
joining
having
us
me. It's
today.
good to be able to process my Poldark feelings with
Yes.
other people.
And full
we aim
acceptance
for.
from us
Yes.
for your Poldark feelings. It's what we all need, to be honest. That's why we started this show. And we want to thank you for joining us once again for Drama After Dark. Remember to get at us on the socials and join us next week for another special guest. Stay classy, Poldarks.
So.